Hey, good evening, class. I just wanted to give you a couple more examples that you can look at, and maybe it would help you while you're trying to do some of your classwork that's due on Thursday. Alright, so look at this example. I have 3n squared plus 11n minus 70. So when we go to factor, the first thing we need to do is look and see if we have a GCF. So I like to look at my a term and say, is a factor of b, or is it a factor of c? Well, I know that 3 is not a factor of 11, so I don't have a GCF. So my next step is to make my table of values where I take a times c and we add that to b. So my a in this equation, remember the a is always with the squared variable, is going to be 3, and then my c is always my constant, times negative 70, which gives me negative 210. And then my b is with the single variable, so that would be 11. So I'm looking for numbers on the left here. I'm going to list all my factors of 210 that add to give me 11. So I know my factors of 210 are 1 times 210. And then I divide 210 by 2 and I get 2 times 105. 3 times 70 will give me 210. 5 times 42. 6 times 35. 7 times 30, and then negative 10 times 21. And I'm going to stop there because the reason why I made this negative, kind of got ahead of myself here, negative 10 times 21 is going to give me negative 210. I know if I add negative 10 plus 21, I get positive 11. So these are the factors I need to use to split up my term. Alright, so my next step is I'm going to take and split the middle term here. I have 3n squared, and then I'm going to have split the 11 into minus 10n plus 21n, and then I'm going to subtract have the minus 70. Okay, so my next step is, remember we split this into two groups now, and I want to factor out, see what's in common between 3n squared minus 10n and then 21n minus 70, and keep the sign there. Okay, so if I look at 3n squared and 10n, 3 and 10 do not have any factors in common, but they do. When I look at here, you look for the lowest exponent. I have an n to the second and an n to the first, so they have one n in common. So that means I'm going to divide everything out by n here. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. Remember, we subtract our exponents. 2 minus 1 is 1. Minus 10 divided by 1 is 10. And then 1 minus 1 is n to the 0. Remember, anything to the 0 is 1, so we don't write n to the 0. So that's factored. So I look at 21n minus 70 and what's in common there. Okay, I know that I need to bring down the sign here. And I look, 21 does not factor into 70, but I know that it has 7 as a common factor. Okay, so I'm going to divide out 7. 21 divided by 7 is 3n. And then 70 divided by 7 is negative 10. So you look for something in common, so that becomes one of my factors. And then the other, n plus 7. I didn't have a GCF, so I have nothing to bring down, so this is my answer. Okay, my second example I'm going to look at is 3x squared plus 39x plus 108. So remember, the first step is to see if you have a GCF. So is 3 a factor of 39 and 108? Well, I took 39 divided by 3, and I saw that 13 times 3 gives me 39. And then 108 divided by 3 is 36. So my GCF here is going to be 3. So it means I'm going to divide everything, each term out here, by 3. So I divide each term by 3. What I divided out, I put on the outside of the parentheses. So I'm left with x squared plus 13x plus 36. Okay, so if I have my pink sheet out, I know my next step is with my new expression, I need to make my table. A times C adds to B. So my new A is 1 times 36, so 1 times 36 equals 36, and then my B is 13. So let's list our factors of 36. I have 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. Okay, so if I look at these, I know, so let me scoot it up here, is that 4 times 9, when multiplied together, gives me a positive 36, and if I add 4 and 9 together, I get 13. So now I have my two numbers that I can split out. So I'm going to split my middle term here using 4x plus 9x plus 36. I didn't change the problem, I just changed the way I have it written. So now I'm going to break down this to x squared plus 4x, and I'm going to divide that kind of out, and I have positive 9x plus 36. So I'm going to look for what's in common in these two. I have x squared plus 4x. Okay, so we all know we have a 1 in common, and we generally don't write the 1 down. So I have an x in common. I have 2 and 1. Remember, we always look for the lowest exponent. The lowest exponent here is 1, so I have 1 in common. So that means I'm going to divide out an x. When we're dividing variables, you subtract the exponent. So 2 minus 1 is 1. I have 1 left. 4x divided by, I'm going to have the 4, and then x to the first minus x to the first is x to the 0. Remember, anything to the 0 power is 1, so I don't write 1. It's just x plus 4. Okay, so now, looking at what's common between 9x and 30. 9 is a factor of 30, so I'm going to factor that out and divide each term by 9. 9x divided by 9, I'm left with x, and then 36 divided by 9 is plus 4. So I have what's in common, what's on the outside that we factored out, and then remembered I factored a 3 out up here, so it means I need to bring that down. So bring down the GCF. So this is my answer to that factoring problem. And the next example we're going to look at is 10x squared minus 15x plus 5. Alright, I know 10 doesn't multiply to give me 15 or 5, but I know my factors of 10 are 1 and 10 and 2 and 5, and 5 is a factor of 15 and also of itself. So I know my GCF here is going to be 5, so I'm going to divide everything out by 5. Okay, so I have this divided by 5, this divided by 5, and this divided by 5. When I divide out, I put it on the outside of the parentheses. 10 divided by 5 is 2x squared. Negative 15 divided by 5 is minus 3x, and then 5 divided by 5 is plus 1. Okay, so now I have my new expression, so I'm going to make my table A times C, and then we want to add to B. So my new A is 1, so 2 times 1. My new A is 2, my new C is 1, so this gives me positive 2, but my B is negative 3. So 2 only has 2 factors. It has 1 and 2. Okay, but I need this to add to be a negative 3, but multiply to be a positive 2. But if I make this a negative 1 times a negative 2 will give me a positive 2, and a negative 1 plus a negative 2 gives me a negative 3. Okay, so those are my numbers I need to split up the middle term with. So I'm going to split up the new middle expression in middle term using negative 1x minus 2x plus 1. Okay, again, I haven't rewritten the problem. I've just split it up. Negative 3x to negative 1x and negative 2x. Okay, so now I'm going to split it in 2, bringing down this sign here. Okay, I have to bring down that sign and then factor out what's in common. So if I look at these two terms, the only thing I have in common is a 1 and an x. So I'm going to put x on the outside and divide this by x and this by x. Okay, 2 divided by 1 is 2. And remember, when we're dividing out variables, you subtract the exponents. 2 minus, this is a 1. 2 minus 1 is x to the 1. So I don't usually write the 1. And then negative 1 divided by the 1 here will be minus 1. X, 1 minus 1 is 0. X to the 0. They just cancel each other out. Okay? Then I'm going to bring down here. What do we have in common? I have a negative 2x plus 1. Alright, remember, everything always has at least 1 in common. So this is a negative, so I'm going to need to factor out the negative 1. Negative 2 divided by negative 1, negative 2x divided by negative 1 is going to be positive 2x. And then positive 1 divided by negative 1 is going to be negative 1. Okay, so we have what's in common is 2x minus 1. You take what's on the outside, you have x minus 1, and then don't forget to bring down your GCF. We factored out a 5 earlier, so my answer would be this. 5 times the quantity 2x minus 1 times quantity x minus 1. So that's the answer to that problem. Okay, the last example I'm going to work with you is 16x squared plus 64x plus 60. Okay, so we need to factor out a GCF again. So I know 16 goes into 64, but it doesn't go into 60. So I look for my other factors that multiply to give me of 16. So I know 2 goes into everything, 8 goes into 64, but not 60, but I know 4 goes into everything. So again, here my GCF is going to be 4. So if I divide that out by everything here, put 4 on the outside, I have 4x squared plus 16x plus 60 is 15. Okay, so that's my new equation there. So I need to set up my table of values. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so I made my table of values. I have a times c is 4 times 15, which gives me 60, which adds to my middle term b, which is 16. So all my factors of 60 are 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 5 and 12, and 6 and 10. And I'm going to stop there because I'm looking for 16, and I can get a 16 from 6 and 10. So we want to split the middle term up using that. That becomes 4 times 4x squared plus 6x plus 10x plus 15. Okay, so now we're going to split this into 2. Remember, you have 4x squared plus 6x, and then I have plus 10x plus 15. What's in common between 4 and 6? Well, I can factor out a 2. And then remember, you look for the lowest exponent. So the lowest exponent I have there is x to the first. So I have an x in common. So I'm going to divide this by 2x and this by 2x. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. X squared divided by x will be x. Subtracting the exponents, 2 minus 1 gives me 1x. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and my x's cancel. Okay, so what's in common between 10x and 15? Well, that would be a 5. So I'm going to divide everything by 5. 10x divided by 5 is 2x. 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay, so I have something in common. I have 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 5. I factored out a GCF earlier, which is 4, so I need to bring down. So that would be my answer to that problem. Okay, I hope these extra problems helped you. And if you have any questions tomorrow or the next day, make sure you see me before or after school. Thanks, and have a good night.